Welcome to this week's On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo, and my guest this week is the very talented and successful Pam Borton. Pam was formerly the head coach at the University of Vermont and at the University of Minnesota. She took her team to a Final Four, an Elite Eight, and three straight Sweet 16s. Pam has also written two books and recently has become founder and CEO of On Point, a coach's game plan to life, leadership, and performance with grace under fire. Pam, welcome to On the Fly.
Well, it's great to be here. It's great to be part of this podcast and really Playfly and really its evolution as well. And obviously, it's great to be with you, Gene, as one of my mentors.
Oh, you're very kind. Hey, Pam, I know that our listeners out there want to know your background. Start from high school, if you would, and take us through your coaching career, and then we can take a break and we'll start with all the things that you've done since you retired from coaching.
Absolutely. Well, I'm originally from Ohio. Grew up on a farm and was one of those farm girls. Played high school basketball in Northwest Ohio at Fayette High School. Went to college at Defiance College. Played basketball for 4 years there and track for a couple of years. After I graduated, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went on to Bowling Green State University and was a graduate assistant for their women's basketball program. At that time, they were a top 25 program. Had an unbelievable experience at Bowling Green under Franville. Went to an NCAA tournament while I was at Bowling Green, and at that point, I decided I wanted to coach Division I college basketball, and I'd go anywhere in the country, to leave the state of Ohio, other than it had to be a warm state. And I think I jinxed myself for my entire career because I ended up getting my first job at Vermont. And so I was at Vermont for 5 years as an assistant coach, was promoted to the head coach, and I was there for 4 years. I was still a very young coach and felt like we had taken that program as far as we could there as well, was able to take that program to an NCAA tournament. Then I went on to sometimes in your career, you have to take a half a step backwards to get what you eventually want down the road. I went from a head coach to an assistant coach. I went to Boston College after that, which is where I met Eugene. You were the athletic director there for the Eagles, and was there for 5 years under Kathy Inglis. Was there as the head recruiter, probably the only recruiter in the program there, and was able to recruit nationally, coach nationally. Was in the Big East at the time, and after 5 years, University of Minnesota called, and I became the head coach at the University of Minnesota then in 2002, and was there for 12 years in the Big Ten. Took a team to a Final Four, as you mentioned, Elite Eight, three Sweet 16s. Was a regular attendee of March Madness. I had a number of players drafted in the WNBA. I had a number 1 draft pick, a number 4 draft pick. I still have 1 or 2 players still playing in the league. I have some players playing overseas, but just a really, really full and very successful career in 27 years of coaching. I learned a lot from my successes. I also learned a lot from my failures as well. I retired after the rat race of college athletics, which everyone on this that's listening to this can completely understand. And it was 9 years ago I started my own business as an executive coach. And 9 to 10 years later, here I am coaching high performers in the sports world and the business world. And I'll pause there to see if you have any specific questions, Gene.
Yes, you were a terrific, very successful coach. I mean, National Coach of the Year on two different occasions. You were Conference Coach of the Year on several different occasions. Uh, what what did you do to get your teams to play so hard and to play together as a team?
Well, that's a great question, and I think that's the secret sauce, whether you're in the sports world or you're in the business world. And what I did as a coach is really you have to build culture. That is number one. You have to build culture. You have to get the right people in your program, people in the right seats, to then really build a high performing team. So it's really just establishing that culture where people want to come, people want to stay, and where people want to try to attract other people in your culture. Then it comes down to building a high performing team, which is formulaic for every head coach and every administrator on how do you build a high performing culture and then high performing teams. But then it's like taking an individual approach. You've got to motivate, communicate, and inspire everyone differently. We all are motivated differently. We all respond differently. And I think that's an art of a coach. That's an art of a leader is to find what buttons to push, whether people need an arm around them or just a swift kick in the pants. But really, it's an art, as far as that. Also, I would say the last, especially in the constantly changing world today, you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to continue learning and growing and adapting. The market's changed, the game has changed, the competition has changed. There's so much ambiguity in our world, and I think as a coach, you have to, or as an administrator, you have to understand that we don't have all the answers. It's okay to ask for help. You got to leave your egos at the door and just know that you don't have all the answers. And I've always, 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 Gene, and you know this the best, we've always surrounded ourselves with the best people, people who are better than us. And that's really what helps get us to the next level is when we understand that I need people that are better than me around me for us to get to where we need to go.
The reason I asked you that is because you took that same formula that you use to build championship basketball teams. And when you started on point, you are teaching many of those same principles and values, not just to players any longer, but to CFOs, to CEOs, to other administrators and people outside of athletics. Talk about that if you would, Pam.
Well, Gene, people are like, oh my gosh, Pam, how did you transition? And, it was kind of scary at first, Gene, but then I'm like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just coaching. I'm coaching people on how to build culture and how to build high performing teams. I just don't have a ball. I don't have a ball in my hands. And it was a seamless transition. And, I think a lot of people are attracted by my background of being a very successful sports coach and now being a very successful executive coach. People are very, very open to asking for help. They want to be the best. I only work with high performers. I only work with people who are, the best at what they do because they want to get to the next level and they have to continue getting better, not just for themselves, but for their organizations, their teams, their people. And, only the best, I would say the best leaders want to have the best coaches. They want to be surrounded by the best. They want to be pushed. They want to be challenged. They want to, celebrate their wins together. They also want that constructive feedback as well on what am I missing, Pam, and so forth. So it's been a seamless transition, and it's actually been I'm having the time of my life, Gene.
You know what? And you're so successful. Tell us what a 2-day seminar would be like, and who might be involved in it, and what do you do to help these people to achieve excellence? Because that's what you're doing. You're bringing them to a new level to achieve excellence.
Well, I would say first, well, we number one, we customize these to every individual. I work with individuals, so I work one-on-one with leaders. I also work with their executive and leadership teams to help them become a better functioning, effective, efficient team as well. We can't do anything alone as leaders, and we need our teams to function like a high-performing team. And then we also work within organizations and the entire departments to help them, navigate some of the challenges as well. So I'll kind of start off the conversation with that. But I think the first thing on how we work with individuals and teams and organizations very differently. We do a little team diagnostic and get a kind of a needs assessment, or what's the strengths of the department, what's the strengths of the organization or team, what are their areas of opportunities for growth, which we call weaknesses. We don't call them weaknesses, we call them areas of opportunities for growth. And then we actually customize it based on what they're looking for, what their needs are, and we customize whether it's a 1 or a 2 day training with teams or organizations. We customize it based on their needs, their strengths, their areas of growth, their values in their organization, what's their purpose, what's their vision, where are they going. So a lot of it is really kind of co-created with the company, with the leader, with the department, and so that's kind of the I would say the academies, or the full day or 2 day event. But with individuals, when we're working with high performing individuals, we number one help them understand themselves. What kind of leader are they? What's their style? What's their approach? What are their natural tendencies? And I think the more that people can learn about themselves, on how they tick, where they lean into more, where they leverage, is really, really important, because it's not that they can't lean into other areas or other strengths, or other gaps that they have. They just have to expend more energy doing some of those things. So just really that developing that self-awareness, and then really kind of how they can manage themselves as a leader, is really, really important. And then we really dive into the emotional intelligence side of it, their EQ, confidence, the empathy, decision making, stress management, a lot of different things. 90% of our business success today is around emotional intelligence. And so we do a lot of development around those soft skills.
Pam, do you have a test that you give to individuals before you work with them, so that you know a little bit about them? Or is there some kind of form that you make them fill out? How do you do that?
We do. We have leadership assessments that we use. We use the EQI 2.0 by Travis Bradbury. It's an emotional intelligence assessment. So it gives us a baseline with kind of where we're starting at and where we want to go with our clients. And then a lot of coaches use this. They use this for their teams as well. And then also the DISC assessment as well. And lots of teams use this. I use this with all of leadership teams, executive teams, on how they can better work together, and better work with each other. And then we have a client questionnaire where we have them fill out a bunch of questions, so we get to know them better, build trust faster. So there is an onboarding phase to our approach in working with our clients.
Pam, when you're working with, just say a staff, a CEO, a COO, a CFO, and maybe a couple of other folks in the organization, are the CEOs, do most of them talk in front of their the people that are working with them and for them? Or do you get that information maybe from the CEO by himself or herself, and bring it in? I mean, that's always a
Hmm.
touchy thing.
You mean as far as some of the areas that they need to work on? Is that what you're
Yes,
asking?
yes.
Great question. Obviously, the individual clients have, some of their own goals on what they want to do to get better, but we do a very structured 360. It's a 360 feedback process that we gather feedback and information from, either their direct reports or board members or peers, or maybe it's a customer that's external of the company. So we gather a broad-based assessment of feedback. I had one of these as a head coach when I was at University of Minnesota. I went through this whole experience, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today, which is a whole nother story. But I had an executive coach for about 3 years at Minnesota, and it was transformational. It took me to another level as a leader, as a coach. I was better. I got better for my players and my staff, for my support staff. It really made me look at so many things, if not everything, very differently than what I was before. So it was transformational and really a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah. Pam, you brought up something about knowing thyself. And I remember as a young coach, it was a Tuesday night, about 10:30, and our defensive coordinator, I was the offensive coordinator, he was our defensive coordinator, and he stuck his head in and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to figure out what this team is going to do on third and short and fourth and short." And he said, "Gene, don't worry about them. Know thyself. It's better than knowing thy opponent." And sure enough, when you get into a certain situation, you're going to call a certain play anyway. So, you know, don't confuse yourself. So knowing yourself is really, really important.
It really is, and Gene, that's exactly where we start with every individual that we work with every team, with every organization. It's really understanding what your strengths are, where you get your energy from, but it's also understanding where it's not. Where are those gaps? Where are those blind spots? And we all have them. I mean, no matter, if we've been around the block for 40 years, we all have those blind spots. And it's really important, especially in the constantly, very difficult changing world, especially in college athletics and also the business world with the market and the industry changes. It is so important to understand yourself because it's how we respond to others as leaders is really impactful.
Pam, as a coach and even a business person, you really don't get a chance to enjoy the successes that you've had in the season. It's, one game at a time, it's one day at a time, it's whatever. And it's only in looking back that you can be proud of your teams and what they accomplished and the type of women that came out of your programs. Can you share with us some of the real joys that you've had being an executive coach and seeing people improve in so many ways in the future?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, Gene, because, first I'm going to address, as a coach or as an administrator, we do not stop and smell the roses enough. We do not celebrate the wins enough because we're win or lose, we're on to the next game. We win a big game and we celebrate it for an hour. And even before you walk out of the locker room, you're thinking about the next game. And I wish if I could go back and change something as a coach, I wish I could say, I need to enjoy those wins so much more because it's healthy. It's healthy mentally. It's healthy emotionally. Um,
And Pam, they're hard to come by. People
they're
think it's easy to win. It's not.
they're very hard to come by, and so, and I look back and I'm like, how did that impact my staff? How did that impact my players? How did that impact everyone around me that I was just on to the next? As a coach, we're all wired differently. We've got a different type of DNA in us than most normal people. Coaches are not normal. Athletic directors are not normal.
I agree to that.
We're crazy, and we just don't stop and celebrate the wins enough. And so, how have I implemented that into my business with my CEOs? They go through the same thing, um, probably more so than coaches because they have to answer to boards, they have to answer to the public, they have to answer to investors, they have to answer to the thousands of people in their organizations. And I help them. That is the first thing that we talk about on my calls with my clients is what were your wins over the past couple of weeks? And they get to share all of their wins from the smallest wins to the biggest wins. And it's amazing how we all think about all the fires that we put out every day, all the negative things, the fires, the bad things that are happening, and I should have done this better, or whatever it is. Our mind plays tricks on us. And so we celebrate the wins. Obviously, then we talk about the missed opportunities as well and how we can move forward. But I've implemented it, incorporated that into my coaching and my businesses. you know, Coach Borton loves to win, so we're going to talk about wins. And my clients absolutely love it. They jump right into meetings and they're like, Pam, I can't wait to talk to you about my wins over the last couple of weeks. I've got some good ones for you, but it really changes the mindset, of my clients and the teams that I'm working with.
Yeah. Pam, writing one book, people tell me, is really, really difficult. Writing two books is really, really, really difficult. Tell our listeners out there about your two books, On Point, and also The Crooked Rim.
Yeah, well, I have them right here next to me. So there's a quick little picture of them. But
Now hold them up again, Pam, because I've read them both and I have gotten a tremendous, tremendous amount of information from them. And I would recommend strongly anybody that's listening here, these are two books that are really, really helpful to people from all walks of life. Excuse me, Pam, but go ahead and tell us about the books.
oh, well, they were very difficult to write. The first one, and imagine a coach who can't sit down, who always has to be doing 65 things at once, that has to sit down and actually write. Was probably the toughest thing for me, that I had to stay in one spot for many, many, many hours and write this book. But my first book I wrote in 2017, right after I left coaching, and it's really kind of a hodgepodge of information, in here, as far as recruiting, as far as winning is never good enough, leading with passion, how to have grace when you're under fire, just different things like that, really kind of how to stay true to yourself. How do you deal as a coach or as a leader with the loss of power? I went through that as a coach when I left coaching. How do you deal with that loss of power or that authority? Some advice I'd give to my younger self. So there's a lot of great lessons from, obviously, me doing it well and me not doing it very well. In this book, I was very vulnerable in the book. Told stories of some of my failures as well. And I don't know if it was therapeutic for me, but it was probably one of the best things that I've ever done. And through COVID, and then when we got hit with COVID, I was on the road, probably speaking about 40 to 50 speaking engagements a year. And COVID hit, and we got to stay home. And a lot of people were asking me, when are you going to write your second book? When are you going to write your second book? And I said, never. It takes too much time. I don't have any time. I'm working too much. And then COVID hit, and I had no excuse anymore. And so then I wrote The Crooked Rim, which is all about how to master your mindset and how to strengthen your resilience. But that's really what I do as an executive coach, is how do we master our mindset, and really take it to the next level. And that's my coaching business.
Please talk more about mindset and the crooked rim because there's a tremendous, tremendous amount of information in here.
Yeah, well, the Crooked Rim is around how to master your mindset, whether it's from a failure, setbacks, on how to level up your confidence, how to get your confidence back. Um, you know, I talk about in my book really kind of where and how I developed my mindset of resilience, that road to the Final Four, my transition, going from coaching into an executive coach. That was changing mindset, mastering your mindset. I talk about it with my clients, every single day, whether they're going to a new project, they're going from to a new company, they've just gotten elevated into a senior vice president role, they're switching positions. You have to hit the reset button for your confidence. It's different. You've got to level up. You're doing different things. There's different expectations. How to master your mindsets in the book. Um, how to be a corporate athlete. I write about how to be a corporate athlete. I think as coaches, a lot about my book as a coach, we're coaching our athletes very holistically, physically, mentally, emotionally, and purposefully. Like as coaches, we hit all four key competencies on really developing the whole person. And I mean, I break those down in the book, and I've taken that to the business world on how to make my corporate athletes holistic, because there are a lot of times they're just focused on the technical skills, but how can they deal with setbacks and challenges and market trends and bad quarters mentally, emotionally, and purposefully. Companies in the 21st century are all purpose driven, and it's really changing mindsets for organizations on how can we be purpose driven instead of mission driven. How can we be purpose driven for the next generations that are coming into the workplace? And I do a lot of work with that, and I would hope the sports industry is in that space as well.
Pam, that is so great. I heard someone speak a while back, and instead of changing mindsets, he used he used a different term, but it was the same thing. He called it rebooting.
Hmm.
And as he was speaking, he said, you reboot when you go to high school, you reboot when you go to college, you reboot when you get your first job, you reboot when you get married, you get reboot when you have kids. And the people who are able to reboot or change their mindset are people who are the happiest and the most successful. Would you agree with that?
100%. There's lots of research on that, on how we can look at things as not fearful or afraid, or I have to change as being a negative. But instead of change, a lot of times in companies we use the word evolve. We have to evolve. We have to continue evolving in this world. I have to evolve as a coach. Um, Companies have to evolve or innovate. And so we also have to evolve as individuals. We can't stay the same as we were yesterday or 6 months ago or a year ago. We have to continue getting better. And so I think just changing the word, like like you have to change your mindset. You just said we have to reboot, or we have to rewire. We have to evolve our mindset and look at it as a positive and an opportunity to grow and get better.
Yeah, that's great. That is really great. Pam, there's a lot of listeners out there that are really interested in all of the things that you are doing. What's the best way to reach out to you and to contact you with questions or setting up visits or whatever?
Well, I am very active on social media, so people can just Google my name, Pam Borton, and connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post every day. I'm a thought leader in my space. You can also email me at pam@onpointnextlevel.com. So they can also get an email, but LinkedIn is probably the most efficient and effective way to get a hold of me.
You know, I like just about everything that you do every day on LinkedIn. And I tell you that I use a lot of your motivational sayings and techniques. I use them over and over again. So please keep doing those.
I will,
That's really
Gene.
great.
I will. I will. Boy, I have lots of stories. When I was working for Eugene, I wish I could share a couple today, but I think that Ash would cut them out of our production today. We had so much fun,
Ash would definitely come out.
and you were such a great athletic director, Gene. You were ahead of your time. You built relationships with people, and I really appreciate that, and modeled a lot of my leadership after what you did in building relationships with people as well.
Well, thank you, Pam. This has been a pleasure. Pam, thank you for being with us. There are so many people that are going to want to get a copy of this podcast and they're going to want to listen to you. And, can't thank you enough.
Can I say one more thing, Gene, before we go?
You sure can. It's your show.
Well, at this point in my career, there are individuals who are at unbelievable companies and firms. And I had an opportunity just a year ago, and I just finished working with Pete Mitchell. And I don't know if you remember the name Pete Mitchell.
I remember he's one of the best tight ends in BC's history. Absolutely.
Pete Mitchell was my client. And so we weren't at BC at the same time, but we had that connection. And now he was obviously a phenomenal tight end at BC, All-American. He went on and played professionally for about 9 years. And now he is just crushing it in the business world. And I had an opportunity to be Pete's coach for about 18 months. And it's been one of the best experiences I've had. And it's not just Pete. I work with other professionals in the corporate world that are former professional athletes, former college players, and it's just been absolutely phenomenal. So, Pete Mitchell, I wanted to bring that up today.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. He is a great person, and what a football player he was. Well, we're out of time on this week's On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo, and I want to thank Pam Borton for being our guest. Pam, you are unbelievable. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Everybody out there, thanks for your time this time, and we'll see you next time.